Hi, everyone. You're about to listen to the Absolute Guard Podcast, episode 79, part one, entitled Getting Old with Sabre. I'm going to be leaving on my honeymoon this week, and will be out next week as well. So we thought we would take pre-record this episode, but then it ended up being so long that we decided to split it up into two parts. So part one will release this week, and then part two will release next week. So after that, I'll be back from my honeymoon, all refreshed. We're gonna go to the Dominican Republic. Probably won't play a ton of Street Fighter, but it'll be a good time. It's gonna rest, recharge, celebrate the fact that I am now married and getting old, but not as old as these guys you're about to talk to. So enjoy part one of Getting Old with Sabre. Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard Podcast. We're a competitive fighting game community podcast examining history and current events from the lens of the Arizona grassroots scene.
Yes, welcome. This is episode 79. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John. And today we've got Sabre AZ, aka Scott, on the show with us again. How's it going, Scott?
What's going on? I like how you say aka Scott, like that's my nickname.
It's a funny world we live in, FGC. I mean, it's like FGC is weird, man. Like your tag, like some people just know you by your tag, and some people, like, you know, your close friends know you by your real name.
How do you guys feel about that anyway?
For both of us, I think both Benny and I, like, we knew you as Sabre first, right? Like, I know you from like the local legends and the Evo streams and stuff like that. And I didn't start calling you Scott until way later.
But I mean, how do you feel like when people just come up to you? I mean, okay, I know random people that don't know you, but say like local people, like, you know, it's like I know like guys like Maynard, he always still calls me by my online name, and I actually don't like that.
Oh, really?
It's less
I don't know. It just seems I don't know, it seems kind of corny, I guess. I don't know. I think it depends on the name. I think it depends on the name too.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's pretty cool when somebody says, "Hey, Grandmaster," and I'm just like, "Yeah, what's up?"
Yeah, I'm gonna go see Isaac. What's up, Chickmunk down? And it's just, I don't know. I am always like, if you know me, dude, like, by all means, first name. You know?
Yeah.
That's how I've always felt. I don't know. That was just random.
I think it comes down to like how do people know you, or where do they recognize you from? Because like if they've only seen you like on stream or like on local streams and stuff like that, and they're just like, oh, that's that AK Grandmaster guy. That's usually how they'll address me. Like, oh, are you this guy? Like, oh yeah, that's me.
Well, yeah, I understand that, you know, but it's just like when we're in conversations and stuff, and you see me, you know, a lot, especially locally, you know. I don't know.
I got the unique situation where like my gamer tag is weeb friendly. It was Samuji, but then people, rather than call me by my first name, they took it and they just changed my gamer tag to something that they wanted, or rather, like, not they wanted, but like something easier to say, and then it just became like an adopted name in Muji. And I have since, like, I renamed myself to Porta John because I was just like, I just go by John in general lately, and even that's still kind of weird. So now
I always thought about doing that. I always thought about doing that, but I feel like I've been in the scene so long. I don't know if it'd just be weird doing that. I don't know.
I think it would be.
I always thought about that.
Yeah, for you in particular, I think you've got a pedigree in the scene, and everyone knows you as Sabre.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I actually always thought about that. I always thought about that, but I was like, how would I do that? You know,
I was like, in terms of like the OG players, like other than like Justin Wong, like was there? I mean, you know, there's obviously like the Daigos and the Taquitos and stuff like that, but like for like American players, like was there anybody that really just kind of like stuck with their tag?
I mean, like old school, like, I mean, hell, even Vi, he went by Cali Power for the longest time. Justin really always went by. I mean, yeah, he had Marvelous and all that stuff, but even as far back as I remember in B5, I mean, he was tagged as Justin Wong.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, because he's the one that I remember that the most is just always like registered as himself.
Yeah, and then like I would say like, oh, I mean, and then you got guys that are just like really close to their real name, you know, like John Choi Boy, Mike Watson, Watts.
Yeah. Even locally, like Danny Mitsu, right?
Yeah, like those
Rick
I like
Dog.
those names. Yeah, I like those because it just naturally works in their favor.
And then you get Jeff throwing a curveball and being like, Luke's balls. His name's not Luke. Whose balls are those, Jeff?
Yeah, no, Jeff's balls. Yeah. So I don't know. I see some of these names. I mean, they're hilarious, but I'm like, I don't know. It's just hard to like address somebody as some of the names, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. The closest thing I had was somebody called me Benny Honda, just because playing Honda back in the day, and Benny Honda, like they would just say that.
Yeah.
That Honda is your license plate, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Still is. Yeah.
That's sick. Yeah, that's sick. Oh yeah, Benny Honda was your gamer tag on Xbox Live too, right, or something like that.
No. That was on PlayStation.
PlayStation. That. Got it.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
Sorry, random tangent.
No, that's fine. You know why I had to use that on PlayStation was because they would not let me use the word master. That's why. That's why that came about. Okay. Because I went to like register on PSN and I was just like, why won't it let me register as Grandmaster B? And then I started putting all these variations in, and it was just like, oh, it doesn't like the word master. And I was like, well, that's whack. And I was like, what the hell am I going to use?
I'm laughing because it's probably because masturbate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just exactly. What is it? A 2008 like Sony PlayStation Network filter. They just did anything and everything.
Yeah, anything that has a master and a B.
Yep, exactly.
Master B.
Yeah. Well, it's like my initials. They're censored out of a lot of arcade games. Like I remember every Namco game. Like I played Tekken and stuff like that in the arcade. Can't put in my initials.
Do you have an O for your middle name?
SOB.
SOB.
So there's like a lot of games that would not allow my initials. Even some websites and stuff. And I'm like, it's weird.
Filters, man.
There's someone out there. There's someone out there with the initials FUK or COK. There's people out there.
I was gonna say, like, in the modern era, like with the rise of Asia, like everyone's doing the 3-letter thing because like DCQ is a good example. His name's Ding Zhongqiu or something like that. Like it's like an actual Chinese name, but rather than spell that out, they just make it a 3-letter thing.
Right, and that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or like I think Uma as well. Uma is just like I think his original name was Kagami, but Uma's way easier to spell. Probably better for SEO.
Yeah, sure. Easy to remember.
Yeah, you see that with just a lot of the Korean players too, I think. And what's that? JDCR, right?
Yeah, NL.
That's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because, like, usually, typically, in I know it's not just Asian culture, but like a lot of times when like foreigners come here, like they adopt an English name, and people are like, well, why did you adopt this name? It's like, well, it's easier for you to say Alan than it is for you to say whatever my actual name is.
Yeah,
and Filipinos do that all the time. Like
same thing with my wife. My wife as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, like it's a kind of foreign thing. It's just like, well, this is my actual born name, but
yeah, you could call me that inverse problem too. I'm like, they're like, your name's John, but what's your Chinese name? I'm like, my name is John. I was born here.
American, bro.
Yeah, dude. Or people try to Asiafy my last name, and I'm like, it's 3 letters. You can't like they're trying to spell TOI or something instead. I'm just like, all right. Can you spell toy? I'm like, all right, it's TOI. I don't know.
What a weird spelling.
Yeah. Oh yeah, everybody thinks that's Chinese too. They think toy is a Chinese last name. They're like, what province is that from? And I'm like, oh, it's just something that my family
United States of America.
United States,
province.
Yeah. Okay. That's funny.
So anyway.
Oh yeah, it's a good transition to talking about getting old, right? Like we titled this episode "Getting Older with Sabre," and we like the idea of legacy names and that kind of following you and not being able. Like again, I would find it weird if you renamed your handle after all these years, unless it was Milfhunter or something.
But that was always a backup.
Yeah.
For our audio listeners, Scott bears or bore an uncanny resemblance to a popular content creator.
Content creator.
2000s
He's
called the
a
Milfhunter.
he was like an late 90s, early 2000s influencer.
Very specific audience, specific target audience.
There was a post I think Jaha made on Twitter a few months ago. Yep. And we were talking about that, and he put up a picture of Milfhunter, and I was like, "Damn, I really did look like him." I did totally look like him, man. But man. I mean, shouts to Jaha, Watson, and Vi. They're the ones that gave it to me. They gave me that name way back in the day.
Yeah, that's funny. But I do think that we've hit a pretty I look back on when I first met you, Scott, as far as like, oh, you're the Sabre, or you're the Rick Dog, or like, I didn't know Jeff at the time because I think he wasn't playing 4, but like I did know you guys by your gamer tags first. And I remember it took me like years to actually start calling you by your first name. And there was like moments where I was like, okay, like I think one time I went over to your house to play casuals, and I was like, Sabre invited me over, holy shit, you know. And it took a little bit to like get rid of that starstruck feeling, I think. And then
you felt like it was so formal. It was like you felt like it was so formal.
Yeah. And I see like hints of that in the modern day scene, like with new people, particularly when 6 came out. Is that like a lot of people were like they knew of me from being like the primary TO for 5 in the later years, or like the podcast actually is a big thing. I don't know about you, Benny, but like I get a lot of people who recognize us from the podcast too. So but then they call me Porta John, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just John, but that works too.
Yeah, your name's in it at least.
Yeah. But a lot of it's just like from there, like even like I would say Chase and Freezy are good examples of people that I've kind of like they knew me by the gamer tag first, and then I've gotten to know them better. And nowadays they just call me by my first name instead. I just feel like that's just something that happens as you get over the starstruck feeling, or like, hey, I saw this person on stream or whatever, and it's more like, oh yeah, this is a normal human being with strengths and weaknesses, and you know, might have a temper for salt. Yep.
Yeah, man.
Probably doesn't like losing. That was one of the big things, is when I started beating players that were more seasoned than I am, and I got to see like how they would react to me beating them, because when I would first meet them, it would be like, they would be very welcoming and being like, oh, it's just somebody learning fighting games, and they'd be polite, or maybe be like, treat you like a scrub too. There's also a little bit of that tough love back then too. But getting to get to a point where I could hang with some of the OGs put me in a position where I was like, oh, I have to like really acknowledge that these are just normal people.
It's funny. It's funny because, obviously feeling that in 4, throughout all of vanilla, like me and Dan just kind of ran over everybody for like the longest, right? Yeah. And then the first one to like really jump up and like finally pose a threat was at the end of vanilla, which was with Juicebox.
Yeah.
And then it's like, fuck, man, I really got to actually start playing. I got to like, and I at first it was like, man, it's like, why is this dude beating me? I'm like, man, what the hell, man? And then it's super, I was trying to level up harder.
Yeah.
Super was an interesting one just because I was going through a lot of transitioning in my life. And then that's when me and Dan still like ran a lot of stuff, ran a lot of events, but then that's when you started doing some stuff with Ibuki, and then that's when you started becoming a problem. And then I got like, now I got this motherfucker, man. Like, god damn it.
I remember it was at one of Haz's tournaments. I remember you told me, man, you're such a fucking. It was you and Dan. It was a team battle, and it was versus me and Dana. And I love Dana, but he got washed. And I think I ultimately lost to both you guys. But like, I remember you telling me at that point, oh man, you are a fucking problem. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Dude, no, you were. No, you definitely became a problem. Once Super came out, and you made that switch to Ibuki, and it's like, man, I got to deal with what was inevitably becoming the meta of Street Fighter 4. Yeah. And you had a character that ran with that meta like quickly, because I mean her meta was instantly recognizable. Right. You know, I think she established the meta of ultimately Street Fighter 4 the quickest. I really do think that, so. Because the kunais, and then you end it with the low Subuji sweep, and then you do it again, and then like there's your set play. I was like, I feel like her, like it was just instantly like there, and then you picked up on it really quick, and then that was fucking annoying.
I want to pick apart why it was annoying too, because like I've actually talked about it on this show in the past, and of like how that stunted my growth as a player, because I didn't learn fucking footsies, I didn't learn how to whiff punish, I didn't learn how to anti-air even, because all it was about was just getting that knockdown. And I see that in some of the modern day Street Fighter 6 players as well, where it's just like, I need to execute my game plan, I don't actually need to play Street Fighter. And so I imagine now I get the feeling nowadays where I'm like, man, these guys just don't know actual Street Fighter, which is obviously a huge that's a mental block more on my end. It's more my problem than anything else.
Yeah, it was like the other day I put in our venting thread. In chat. I played this Luke the other day, right? And he was like a 1900 player or something like that, right? And I would just do something, and he would just jump. And I'm like, fuck, he jumped at. Like, all right, I'm trying to get a read on him, right? Yeah. And then like he would just jump at all these really bizarre times. And then I'm like, all right, I'll sit back a little bit. All right, he's gonna jump. And I get him to jump. All right, I'll answer. And then the damn answer, the jumping would just beat me. And I'm like, freaking Luke,
jump fierce.
Right? And he was just like, so it's like, all right, this is what this guy's game is. He knows his jumping is really strong. He's gonna bypass everything. He's gonna take the chances of you know, all right, I'm going to lose 800 to 1,000 health on these anti-airs, but if I connect, there's half your life. Right. And Oki and corner. And so he was betting that risk reward every time the jumping, because he was just jumping at the most bizarre times. Even in areas I didn't think it was possible to jump, he managed to jump. And then if I didn't have a charge rate, I can't anti-air him. And I was like, and I was just looking at it like, this guy's
it's not Street Fighter, right? You're like, this guy's playing anime. He's like holding glittering strings and stuff.
But he's not playing like in our sense like Street Fighter, but at the same time, he is playing a subset of it, because a subset of Street Fighter in any fighting game is calculating your risk versus reward. And he was calculating his risk versus reward. I'll take 1,000 here, I'll take 1,000 there, but if I do get you on this one, I got you.
Yeah.
And I ran into that with Marvel as well, when Marvel 3 came out and everyone started optimizing their BNBs, and it's like you can play like a complete jackass because all you need is that one hit, and you neuter their team, and you could potentially win the whole game off it, right? Yeah. And I remember actually I at least in the local Marvel scene, I was because I had the Street Fighter 4 background, which again it was still shaky because of the Ibuki stuff, but I still had more Street Fighter 2D fighting game experience than a lot of the new Marvel 3 players. And so because of that, I would behave more like I'd stay more grounded than most people that were picking up the game for the first time or came from an anime background where they always want to be in the air. And lo and behold, it's actually better to be in the air in Marvel anyway. So I was wrong there, but I get it. Like they play weird, right? And it's annoying at first. And I was curious about like, you know, like, or yeah, Benny, have you ever run into any instances like that where like you've been playing somebody and you're like, man, this is different than how my definition of Street Fighter was, and how did you deal with that? Were you annoyed by it or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like Scott said when it came to like jump-ins. Like I remember there was a clip from like 5 where I think it was a Ryu or an Akali or something was just jumped at me 5 times in a row, and I anti-aired them 4 times, and then the 5th one, I guess the spacing was just a little off, and they got that one hit, and I was just like, those 4 anti-airs or whatever that I didn't deter him at all. He was just like, this is nothing. But if I hit this one, you know, jump fierce or whatever it is, then, you know, now you're going to get knocked down and it's my turn. And I don't know, it's just, I don't really think of it like get frustrated about it. It's more like, you know, you got to make adjustments to how people play.
You have to. You just have to.
And it's like, the way you're talking about it is like, even I gotta like simplify things at times because like once I realize that this is what this guy wants to do, like I either need to do like bigger punishes and to deter him that way, or I gotta find other ways to kind of shut things down. Like I've played numerous Kens that all they do is do like run DP to try to get through the fireballs. So all I do is just keep spacing myself out further and further and try to bait that. And they'll hang themselves constantly. Or
Yeah.
I think the big one you talk about characters like stunning your growth, and to me the biggest example in 6 is Kim. Like those are the characters that I see that's the people the a lot of the players that I see that use that character
Run
don't
slide.
have the patience to walk.
Run
And against
slide or
Sim,
teleport.
yeah,
Run slide or
yeah,
teleport. Yep.
slide or teleport, and like against Sim, like the only answer that I've seen that works consistently for her is to like teleport and then like EX Tatsu or whatever she has. That's the only thing. Everything else gets blown up by like the jump roundhouse, or even I think from the Sim Discord, even just back medium punch will put them in that force knockdown state. And it's funny, like you see those players and you're just like, okay, well, I'm full screen. Like, are you just gonna walk? And they're just like, nope. And then I see the smoke and I'm just like, come on. And you blow that up constantly and you're just like, they don't know what to do at that point.
Yeah. I think that so both of you guys' answers sound pretty similar to me in that like it's you ultimately like if you're getting beat by something that is non-standard or in your mind non-standard at least, you ultimately take ownership of that and then you just try to figure out how to beat that, right? And
Yeah.
I think that at least when I was younger and I would be that guy doing the random shit or like trying to force vortex on everybody a lot. For every person like a Scott or Benny, there would at least be 2 or 3 more people that would just get fucking irritated and frustrated and then just wouldn't give me any respect because I played Vortex style and not actual Street Fighter. And I found, and you kind of see it even in the modern era too, just like a little bit less so, but I think there is this like kind of zen you have to end up having where like you have to acknowledge the way the game is played, like the way the meta was evolving with the vortexes and learning how to acknowledge that, and then knowing that what you used to be good at in as far as like whether it was Street Fighter 2 or Third Strike, there were plenty of Third Strike players that hated 4, right? A lot of the like, I know what you want to do, but I can't do anything because I don't have parry. I heard that a couple times.
I was going to say something. And it's like this for everyone. It's an ego thing. It really is. When it comes down to it, it's an ego thing. Because someone found a hole in your game plan, and it's not a hole that you respect, but whatever. It's like, and it's different for every skill level. So, like, in 6, I don't think I'm the greatest player. I'm an 1800 MR player, whatever. And I'm sure the way I play, if I play against like, someone that's 2000 MR or whatever, and if I beat them, I'm probably doing something on their end. They're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And I think it changes on the skill levels, and that's why like you see like a lot of, like there may be a lot of top players that like will just not give like a lot of like people like just below them enough respect because because their level of thinking and strategy is not on their level. So they're thinking their strategies and thinking is different than theirs. So it's not normal for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like we've talked a little bit about like having to unlearn as well, the burden of unlearning. And I've actually found that like the more fighting games you play over the years, yeah, you're better out of the gates because you can pick up new games faster. But then some of the younger kids nowadays can pick up games so quickly too because they don't have like Ed is a good example. Ed came out and like the 16-year-old kid in our scene like skyrocketed with him. The rest of us are like, fuck this character. He's too hard. His low forward doesn't hit low, dog. What the hell?
Yeah. And then not only that, it's like these new kids, they come out and it's their first game. Their style of thinking is going to be different than yours. I've been playing for 30 years. They're going to approach the game possibly different to me, and they're going to come with different strategies to me that don't make any sense, but may make perfect sense to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, that Luke player, okay, is it going to carry him very far? I don't know, because obviously that strategy is not going to work as well for characters that have really damaging anti-airs, like say like Chun or something like that, that could really mess you up with a bad anti-air, with the drive rush anti-airs, right? And stuff like that, or whatever, but with me, it's like he was calculating it. Anytime I did a move, he knew I lost my charge, and he's like, well, he's gonna have his probably style of thinking is probably like he lost his charge, he doesn't have up kicks, therefore he's gonna have to contest this stupid ass jump roundhouse with back roundhouse, with back roundhouse, which is not and it's like, well, is that really stupid?
Yeah.
It's frustrating the crap out of me after he just completely destroyed me 2-0 with it. I mean, I had to like throw my headphones down and then just like I had to turn it off because it did tilt me. It did tilt me, but at the same time, I wasn't mad at the guy.
Yeah.
I have to hold that. I had, it's like I didn't have control of him.
Yeah.
Is the
I didn't teach him a lesson.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I didn't teach him enough of a lesson, and he kept doing it, and it got him the win. And so it's like, it's on me. And at the end of the day, I guess I understand. Like, some people just do the weirdest shit. They just play they just go like crazy, like mash DP and stuff like that. Well, I mean, yeah, it's fucking annoying, but that's part of the game. You just have to figure it out, and it's on you to figure it out because what they're doing is unsafe.
Is that
you block it, you blow it up?
That's true. And sometimes you need to block it more times than they like 3 or 4 times to really hammer the point home.
And sometimes you are. Unfortunately, the thing is that you are the smarter player. They may not be the smarter player, and they're not learning from it. I mean, there could be people that just like, I don't know what else to do. This is my only option, so they're going to keep doing it. And then you're like, "Oh, this is scrub. Why does he keep doing it?" It's like, because he probably doesn't know anything else.
Yeah,
he doesn't. He's ran out of options, so he's just going to keep doing it and hope for the best. It's just like, is that really on them? It's like, why would I talk trash about that player?
I mean, like when I was salty, like I would, like I realized there was a certain point where I was blaming people for beating me.
Oh, so was I. So was I. No, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. I am 100% guilty of that.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older and seen all these new generations, because I've been around every single generation, and I've seen how players come up and all that, especially these different games, that they get easier or whatever, and all that, and just seeing how they develop. And it's just like it's just different. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just, that's one way, I guess you could say, you can express yourself by playing in these different ways, right? Yeah. Why should the way that you think that the game's supposed to be played in your head dictate the way I want to play it?
Exactly. I mean, that's not just even in fighting games. Like, playing Call of Duty for a number of years, like people would get mad because me and my friends would play like defensive, and we'd put like claymores and stuff like that to stop these guys that would like run and gun. And it's just like, you'd hear people get pissed off, and they're just like, why don't you want to fight this way? And I was just like, why do I need to fight that way? You're the one, running around corners blindly and killing yourself. Like, I'm playing to win. And it's the same thing like in fighting games. It's just like, that person that jumps at you 5 times, you might be like, why are you playing this way? But like Scott said, maybe that's just the way that they know how to get in. Like,
it's like, here's a good example, and it's current. Look at Noah. What is he known for? What is he known for? What is he known for?
Hulk standing H.
No. But what does every commentator always talk about his game style? He doesn't care about burning himself out.
And he burns out.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care because he knows his character is powerful. And it's like, is it a smart idea? Probably not. But he wins a lot.
He does.
He just won Bo's birthday bash this weekend. I mean, he almost makes it in the Capcom Cup and all that stuff. It's just like, who are you to say that this is the wrong style?
Yeah.
If it's winning, and then even then, and then I learned this lesson a long time ago from Vi, because I remember a long time ago we used to play Third Strike, and when he would come to town sometimes, or go out to Cali or online or whatever, and he would play SA3 Ryu, Denjin Ryu, and I always thought his SA1 Ryu was better, which is the Shinku, because you get 2 bars and you have more access to, you keep access
EX.
to the super, but you get your EX, right?
Yeah.
Denjin, if you use EX, you lose Denjin, right? Because it's just a bar. And it's just like, I always thought his pressure with SA1 with EX fireballs was so amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he uses SA3, and then like half the time he never uses it. Like he just never uses Denjin. And I was like, dude, how come we just don't use SA1? It's like, well, first, it's like I think I'm better with SA3. And it's like, yeah, but you never use Denjin. And it's like, yeah, it's like because I like to play with the threat of it. I just like playing with the threat of it. And also, it's like just because it's like, and also he said it's like, and plus, nobody's gonna dictate how I play.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's fair. No one's going to dictate the style that I play. And Vi has always had his unique style. He'll hit buttons that like no one else does that uses or anything like that. But it worked for him. It worked for him, and it made him a harder player to read because of it.
Yeah.
So
your style and Vi's style are actually pretty similar in my book, as far as like it's a lot of play by feel. I think you guys can crack out the frames. Like I've seen you like, you know.
Oh no, I have feel.
Study.
I'm like half and half. I'm like half and half.
Yeah.
I think I'm half and half.
When you're grooving, like we had a little inside joke for our training group in Street Fighter V, where like Scott just hits buttons in the corner a lot, and that's when you're feeling it. Like you're even the one to tell me on the show once, like the idea of being able to disrespect the frames. You know, like you can know what the frames are, but you can know the rules before you break them, and then that's when you play by feel, and that's when you get loose,
even
right?
there. And then there's sometimes, and I see it a lot. Like I watch the Tekken 8 streams. It's like people are like, "Why did he hit a button there? He's negative. It's not his turn." I was like, "Yeah, but you don't." But the thing is, though, is that the person that gets his turn doesn't always use the fastest button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know, like it's just like I'm not always just gonna like okay. I'm like I'm minus 1 or 2. Not everyone's always just gonna go for the jab. They may want to go for something beefier, and then maybe me hitting a button even when I was negative might be whatever heavy situation you're trying to go for. I don't know, you know. So there's gonna be sometimes we're pressing on negative. I wouldn't recommend it, but there's gonna be some times where it actually might make sense.
It took me like
based off feel.
Into Street
if you
Fighter
see some
5
patterns,
to figure that out, yeah. Because they
I would recommend it.
Too.
Yeah, they could be doing some type of delay button or whatever, and it's like, me jabbing might actually make sense here. It may not make sense to anyone else because they're completely going off numbers and like you should just never press here. But there's going to be some times where it actually might make sense, and it may be enough to throw that opponent off, like because he's going to be like, I can't believe he jab checked me there, right? And then he's going to be like, I was like, this fucking scrub, and now you pissed him off. And now you might be getting in the head, but at the same time, you beat them, then they won't respect you because you hit a button on negative, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, well, I had a feeling here. You know, it's I don't know, man. That's how I see it.
There's an interesting side of this where, like, again, that the answer to coping with, you know, getting beat by something non-standard or getting beat by a newer player that's executing a strategy that, you know, just the game it's relevant to the meta of the game and not necessarily relevant to the meta of Street Fighter. You know, the answer is to like be respectful. Fundamentally, there's respect that that's a game plan, respect that that's a form of expression, and so on and so forth, right? And don't think of it as right or wrong. Just think of it as another way to express it that you or a problem that you have to surmount, like what Benny was saying. And you know, how do you twist that though? Look at the other end of it and think about like, oh, I'm trying to give somebody advice on how the right way to play is as well. Like, you know, people will always like there's folks in our Discord lately that have been asking for replay analysis, right? And it's like, okay, well, you know, we can tell them to anti-air more, but at what point is it like are you forcing them down like a rote style? You get what I'm saying? Like
I think it depends. I think it depends. Like obviously you got the obvious strategies that you should always do. Like again, anti-air. You should anti-air, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to block because now you just gave it. You gave in to their offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to anti-air because you want to control. You got to control them in some way. So like saying, "Hey, you didn't anti-air there. You need to anti-air more." I think that's like a strategy that you should 100% do all the time. But then there's other things like, well, he's doing this, and then like there may be a couple of avenues of handling it, and that's why I use words like, well, maybe you could try doing this, or maybe think about doing this.
Okay,
you know, possible
more
avenues.
Like a passive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're dictating how they play, which is exactly what Vi is.
Because
no one dictates it.
Yeah, right. And unless there's a 100% counterplay involved, like anti-air is a 100% counterplay to jump-ins, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have a really bad anti-air.
That or you have like Lily like canceling supers in the air or some shit like that.
Yeah. But if you have like 100% counterplay, you should give them that answer. Yeah. That's 100%, right? But there's a lot of nuance when it comes to like someone poking or whatever, but you just give them ideas.
Yeah, I feel like the anti-air example is kind of weird because it's like Scott said, like I feel like that's something that you really have to establish. Like that's like kind of a baseline thing that if you want to get better, you have to get better at that, because typically if you're not anti-airing consistently, then you're getting hit and you're getting, that's steamrolling into other situations. And it's a lot harder to kind of explain to somebody, well, I don't know how this round could have played out differently because you did anti-air 4 times in a row and you died because of it, right? Sure. Whereas like, I didn't get a chance to kind of assess like how you were going to play offensively or what you were going to do after the anti-airs because you just never did it.
Yeah. I'm gonna call out Freezy again. That literally happened this past tournament where the Luke player jumped it in the death, and he anti-aired him a couple times, but not enough to actually make him stop. And the other thing that's really unique about anti-airs for me is that anti-air, and I didn't land on this until like late into Street Fighter V, really, because anti-airs were a problem that I had in that game too. But I realized that anti-airs were a symptom and not a cause. Like anybody can ultimately hit the button at the right time. Just like look for it and look for them to jump in the air, and then you just hit the button at the right time. You do the motion and whatnot. Like mechanically, they're not that difficult. But I think what actually makes them hard is
the tunnel vision. The tunnel vision.
Mental stack.
Tunnel vision, all that. Yeah.
So the anti-air, when you don't anti-air, it's not that you don't have anti-airs, it's that you're busy thinking about something else. And then I think that's actually the bigger question whenever people are like trying to ask like why can't I anti-air? It's because like what else are you thinking about? What are you thinking about in that moment fundamentally when they jumped at you?
Yeah, oh yeah, like when I'm super focused on the ground and I want to I don't really focus that much on the ground as much. I mean, I try to play neutral DJ as best as I can without just going ham with drive rush. But the thing is, though, like when I was playing like Ken or whatever, like say like with me and you were playing, John, and we're just like whiff punishing each other. I'm super focused on there, but then you would jump, and I'm just like, hi, because I'm so focused on whiff punishing, and I'm just not ready for it. And because I put so much of my brain power on that one lane. Yeah. I'm looking for your DI. I'm looking for you to whiff a low forward or whatever, but I forgot to leave some of my brain power for the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something I've gotten a lot better at as playing 6, because 6 really, early on tested our mental stacks like crazy.
Yeah.
Now we're getting used to managing. It still does, but we're as we play, we manage it better. And it's something that really it's like, how do you teach that? I think the only way you really teach that is just you keep playing.
Yeah. Exactly.
And being aware, obviously being aware of where you're failing at it. Obviously, not catching the anti-airs is pretty obvious. It's like, hey, he jumped on me and I didn't do nothing. All right. I need to start looking for that,
Yeah. Because there's a lot you got to think about in like terms of spacing and stuff like that. For me, like I've been subject to getting hit by low forwards all the time because I'm focusing on anti-airs and other things too much. And like I'm trying to walk back and like I get clipped by low forwards all the time. And I'm just like, why do I keep getting hit by this? And it's like, well, because I'm not blocking low. I'm looking at anti-airs and I'm worried about DI and I'm worried about maybe a fireball. And it's just
there's always something you're leaving on the table.
Yeah.
And then it's also up to that opponent to try to figure out like what part of their game plan are they not thinking about.
Yeah, it's there's a give and take into it as well, because like you can be like, okay, well I will now pay more attention to the air, but that will nerf your ground game. Or like Benny said, like you'll like Benny, you're trying to position yourself for the anti-air, and that's when you get clipped low. So you're giving up something in order to watch for the air. So I found actually the best players are not necessarily the ones that can anti-air 100% of the time, but they just know well enough to like switch between looking for that stuff at a very rapid pace based on how their opponent is playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like, all right, I'm going to spend 10% of my brain power on anti-airs because there's not a lot of jumping, but now I'm starting to see this other tendency popping up. All right, now I'm going to dedicate like 30% of my brain power to the anti-air, and focus a little less on this aspect. You're constantly shifting the puzzle pieces in your head, right? To accommodate what your opponent's doing, right?
Yeah,
like you said, it's definitely a give and take.
I've seen people like, it took me the longest time to figure out like, why would somebody walk forward into a fireball and just eat the fireball? And like, as one of the Cali players I was talking to, he told me about it. He was just like, I don't want to give up the space. Like, I'll eat the fireball. I just don't want to give up the space, and I don't want to give the concentration of like. And so the fireball is like, they're not watching to do any anti-fireball moves. They're not watching to try to beat the fireball in any way. They're deliberately choosing to.
They're looking at the other stuff. Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to waste my brain power on that.
Yeah, because I might get bigger return, like that jump, the loot jump roundhouse. That's where the money's at. I don't have to worry about potentially stuffing a fireball and putting myself at risk.
Sure.
Yeah. You talk about like the adaptability, John, and it's something that I was like, so I've been kind of like reflecting on like after I hit 1800, right? I was kind of reflecting on like what I needed to go beyond that, because like personally, like I don't want to play any more ranked right now. I'm just gonna leave it where it's at, and I'm just playing in the hub to kind of work on stuff. And like, so I started looking through the sim Discord, because like every now and again there's people in there just asking for like general tips and advice and stuff like that. And there's like a guide in there too that somebody was like, hey, what do I do about this? And they linked the guide. So I started looking through that guide again. Like I looked at it months ago, and then I kind of like haven't looked at it, and I looked at it again, and it kind of refreshed me about a lot of things in terms of like being it turns into that whole like proactive reactive thing. And it's just and it's like, as sim, like, yeah, I want to be a wall, but like I'm not gonna win the game if I'm just gonna be a wall, right? Unless that person is just that dumb and really kind of brain dead with how they jump in and all the time. Like I need to be able to switch to the proactive play, switch to like my offensive stuff and my Oki, and kind of steamroll them from them, or what they were calling the yoga blender, that kind of thing. And I've noticed like that's where what really kind of pushed me over to the 1800 side is like I was kind of stuck in that low 1700, and then like I would hit like 1750 and then drop, and I'm just like, what am I missing here? And I was just like, I need to be more offensive, and I need to take advantage of these situations. And that's when I saw that I was like beating like better players than I would before. Was like I would do those Oki situations, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is where I need to kind of build on my offense and take advantage of this stuff, because like I can't always be like, all right, I got a knockdown, let me go reset and throw a fireball and go back to zoning, because I have an advantage right now. I gotta take advantage of that and
you want because you want to overwhelm their mental stack. You want to overwhelm their brain, and there's certain scenarios where I play a DJ where I do go back to play neutral, and I'll just like, all right, I got this. So I'm just gonna throw a fierce fireball. And it's not scary, but there's times where I just want to play the neutral, and see if I can control. It's just kind of like a test for myself, just because I know DJ has some shortcomings with it, but I want to be really strong at that aspect. I just want to. But yeah, it's like like you were saying, it's like you want to you get that knockdown. It's like, all right, do you go back to becoming a wall, or do you still go in and change gears? And then now they got to think about a few things instead of just blocking from far, because all you got to do is block, right? Nothing's happening. No exchanges. Now, like, all right, I did this. Now I'm going to teleport in, the jump light, and then like, is he going to throw? Is he going to poke? What's he going to do?
Yeah, you want to put them in that
now you got them thinking. Now you got them thinking 3 or 4 things. Whereas before, if you just threw a fireball, they're thinking one.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not stressing them out at all.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You're not giving them any type of anxiety or whatever, and you're not going to be able to force as many mistakes.
Forcing mistakes is a great way to put it too, because like the way that really made it click for me, I think it was late 5 as well. All the shit I learned in late Street Fighter 5 is the concept of the life lead, because there was this like light bulb switch that went on for me when I played, like figuring out how Street Fighter worked compared to like how Marvel worked, where Marvel by default, and then I realized later on that it actually applies to every fighting game, including Marvel and anime and stuff like that. But like you have this ebb and flow where like early on, the people that attack first are usually the ones who are the best because they've worked out these really complex flow charts and they can really fuck you up for it. Like I was thinking about that when I was learning Strive as well. Is like once you get, every character's got bullshit, and once you get that bullshit off, if you win, then you're golden. But when eventually when the game is like mature enough, everybody can do that bullshit. So the people that actually stand out are the ones that can play defensive and counter that bullshit. And I realized that also applies to Street Fighter, where it's like if somebody is chasing me, then I have more advantage than if I'm going after them. And again, if I contrast this back then to my Street Fighter 4 Ibuki, where I was just like go go go, gotta get knocked down at all points in time, I never ever played defensively or reactive. But the kicker is to like bait them into, you play proactive initially to bait them into wanting to come at you, because now you have the life lead and they've got to come at you, and then you play reactive and you shut them down. And then like that's like been the core my core gameplay strategy since Street Fighter 5 is just like, if I have the life lead, I now know that I can manipulate the game to the pace that I want to, because now they have the burden of coming in on me.
Yeah,
unless you
exactly.
play.
You get to dictate the terms. It's like what I told you, like when I went to Game On, right? The biggest thing I learned from Game On wasn't from like beating anybody; it was from watching Akita play and seeing how he kind of distanced himself from people consistently. And it's just like, even if he did have the advantage, it was just like, I'll press a little bit and then I'm just going to teleport away. And like, I've incorporated that, and that was the biggest thing I learned from that, is because like I would constantly kind of hang myself, and like you said, I got the life lead and I'm just like, all right, let me do this teleport mix up. And what do I get? Like autocorrect level 3, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm burned out, and now I'm at a disadvantage, and that's a whole nother problem. So I'm like, yeah, just kind of watching him was probably the biggest thing I got from Game On Expo, was just seeing him play and watching him play.
It's always the fun part, is figuring out when to turn it on, when not to turn it on, and stuff. Yeah. And that's always one thing I always found fascinating, and I've always respected about like Tekken and Virtua Fighter, the 3D fighters, is that like you have to have good defense in those games, because blocking is so much more dynamic. There's it's just not high low. You got your mids and throws and all these chains that they don't jail. It's like, where do you crouch, where do you sidestep, and all that. And I forget where I'm going with this, but I'm like, dude, like defense, dude, like you could, man, I played some players, they would get a life lead on me, and then they would just sit back, and I'm like, and they're better at me because they're better at their movement. They're Korean back dashing nicely. There's certain chains, like I like playing offense is not that hard in Tekken. It's the defense. That's where the skill comes from. And like dude, it's just like, man, I can't touch these guys once they have defense. And it's like some things I'm like, these work good. I'm like, nope, he's punishing this. He crouched under this, the second hit of this, and did a launch punish. And it's just like, fuck, man. like the defense respect to Tekken is so insane. Yeah. It's so insane in that game, man. I'm like, it's so hard. It's so hard when you play a defensive player in that game that knows everything. They're so crazy.
Even when I was learning Strive, and we were talking with Ryan Karlovsky about it too, like he puts pride on his defense in anime, and it's like it exposes a weakness in the general meta of the game, because if everybody's learning offense and then there's that one guy that's learning defense, if everybody else is learning offense, they probably have shitty defense, and so you don't even need to have good offense to punish that. So you can have good defense and then fuck everybody else up.
And I feel like that's how like every game starts. Like every game starts out where just even though we're not playing the fastest, everyone's just trying to develop. What's the first thing everyone's doing? Like, well, offense. Like, buttons, what's safe? What's safe? What's safe? What are my combos? Blah blah blah. We'll worry about that. We'll worry about defense later. Let's just overwhelm the opponent. And like Tekken 8, that's like a big thing right now because the heat is so toxically offensive, right? And you're just always in someone's face every time, man. You think Drive Rush is crazy. You ain't see nothing until you see this heat stuff in Tekken 8. This stuff is whoa. And there's some similarities, there's some parallels, but I think heat is just like on another level. But it's just like this game really does promote offense. But once you run out of your heat, it's like because it can be tough for the defender to defend to get some of it too. But once you run out of heat, defense is going to win the game again. You're going to get outplayed. If the guy knows his defense, which every top player, like there's one thing in Tekken, dude. I don't think a top player exists that doesn't have good defense. You have to have insane defense. You cannot win at that game without good defense. That's why if you ever saw Tekken 7, people were just moving right in front of each other in their face, not hitting any buttons.
Yeah.
When do you see that in Street Fighter? You don't.
I want to make a point there too, in that like when we say defense, I don't necessarily mean like blocking it out. Like Marvel 3 was a great example where it's like, hey, yeah, but if you try to block it out, they're gonna hit you with like a four layer mix up, the high, low, left, right, and you're gonna die because you're gonna get hit by one of those things, and then their assists are gonna come back up, and they're gonna do the same thing to you over and over again. So the reality of the situation was always to never be in that position in the first place, and that's movement. Movement is the other side of defense that I don't think I want to call out explicitly there, like in Tekken as well, is that your movement is your first line of defense, essentially, of not being in that situation in the first place.
Korean backdashing gets you out of a lot of offensive situations. Because you're backdashing and you're getting the block at the same time. Yeah, which is really good.
There's speaking of Tekken,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, so me and Scott, he was talking at work one time, and he was like, "Oh, I think you hit Mighty Ruler at the time. It's like a week or two ago." And you were like, "Oh, I'm doing pretty well. I just keep putting people in 50-50s with Paul, right?" And like you were talking about, like the damage was like 50-70%.
Yeah.
So I thought it was. I didn't tag you in this tweet because like I didn't know when you were going to be back on the show, but I thought it was funny. It was from Speed Kicks, who's a top Tekken player, and it was a poll that he put up, and it says the set score is 1-1. The enemy Paul Phoenix lands a heat engager. You have 50% HP left, and there's a wall blast behind you. You said your prayers. You said your prayers to your God. Which way are you blocking? And it's like block low or block mid. And then like it was funny looking at the responses because he was like replying to him, and like there's a guy that was like, the real answer is the mash because fuck that, I'm going out swinging, not guessing.
Yeah, because the high or low is both going to lead to the same problem.
Yeah,
because it's like I hit you with my heat engager, right? The heat engager automatically dashes you forward and puts you in plus frames. So then that's either like the really basic mix-up. I mean, you can add layers to it. And if you're on a stage with the explosions on the side or whatever, you do that, you do the heat engager, it pushes you all the way forward, right in their face, like right in their face. Plus frames in their face, right? and some of those stages with the danger areas are small stages. And it's like, okay, I'm in your face. Now you either got to block me doing a death fist, which is going to do a lot of damage, right? Because that's a mid. If you block low, you're going to eat the death fist, and I can spend all my meter and use all my heat to dash forward again.
Yeah,
it'll dash forward again. It'll use all my meter, but it'll dash forward again, and I continue to stay in his face. If he gets to the wall, now I got the wall, or I splat him and I death fist him again, or whatever. And then if it's the explosion, they explodes him out of the corner, and I'm doing like 80% damage. Or if you're also near the wall, I do my heat engager, I dash forward. It's like, okay, well, I go low with the demo man, and the demo man, he does that last part. It's going to wall splat again, and it's damn near the same scenario. The only difference is I can't. It's not a heat move, so I can't heat exchange and go forward after that. But if I'm near a wall, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then and then I could just do it again really on your wake. I mean, dude, it's just if you block, and because that's the thing. The death fist is usually minus 17. It's punishable, right?
Yeah.
But if I have heat, I just cancel on that in the heat dash and I'm plus.
That sounds pretty similar to DPF ADC or sweep into
yes. I would say
DRC.
Yes. Right. I would think it's like a lot of it's like kind of a mix between drive rush maybe and focus. Except you only get the meter once per round, and then you use it. But yeah, it's yeah. I didn't see that pull, but that's fucking hilarious.
That's a straight 50-50, I put people. Right?
Yeah. I don't have to use those two moves. It's just a mid-low mix-up.
Yeah,
and it's all gonna lead to damage.
Yeah,
I mean, now if I go low and I go demo man, and if they block low, even if because there's no heat properties on it, I will get launched. So there is still some risk, but I could do some stuff to mitigate some of that. But yeah, it's still the reward is so high though.
I remember it was like roughly like a year before 6 came out. I went through a stint where all three of us went through a stint. Maybe not you, Scott, but me and Benny were learning cross Tekken, and you were kind of like dusting it off. And I remember being in similar situations with you playing Paul Phoenix or Law and cross Tekken, where it'd be like, oh, I'm going to eat this 50-50, and it's going to end up in the same situation anyway, no matter what, because you're going to tag cancel it or you're going to go into EX.
Oh, the corner mix-up that I had, the jump in?
Yeah, it was a jump in. Yeah, it was a jump in, but then you would block string into a high-low, and it would put me in the exact same situation. And that got me thinking, I'm like, so... You know, I hear that the Tekken discourse is strong right now because of that bullshit, but like, isn't that bullshit present in pretty much every fighting game? Like even in the old games, like Cross Tekken is not technically an old game, but like there was bullshit in the older games too, right? Where like it would just loop situations over and over again, like Vortex.
Yeah, I mean, Tekken has its BS, but I think it's up until 8 though. I mean, to be fair, you could still like Paul. He's always had his 50-50. It's just the heat mode just exacerbates it to a whole new level. Okay. But I've always been able to do 50-50. I can run up to you, Death Fist, or Demo Man. And I'm getting good damage, right? It's just that it's more risky in those games, but it is there. It's just that it's just a lot different in this game. It's just they made offense really easy. Because then you have the heat burst, you just hit 2 buttons and you just spin on the meter. And in my case, my heat burst starts at a low. It's like a modified demo man. It's just a free low.
Oh.
And I get 45% damage. You have Devil Jin, who's arguably got the best one. It's like the Alpha 3 Cycle Crusher, the boss Bison, where it's like the full screen Cycle Crusher. Dude, that's what it is. And you got to eat it, and it's plus frames. And it eats up armor and everything.
Oh man,
it just blows through everything. Yeah, it's like, dude, they really put offense on there, and I think the Tekken, like Harada and all that, they really want to blow up defense because, like I said, once the players get so good at defense, it becomes very hard to hit them. Yeah, because their knowledge is so strong. Tekken is just completely full. If you thought Street Fighter has knowledge checks, Tekken's on another level.
Yeah,
because everyone's got like over 100 moves. There's knowledge checks everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah.
Constant knowledge checks. And when you got a top level player that knows it all, it becomes very hard to hit because the game is so reactionary.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
Do you have like a general theory, or either of you have like a theory for like why they were putting so much emphasis on offense in the new Tekken compared to?
I think Harada got tired of seeing Tekken 7 where everyone's just like waving in their face, but no one's hitting buttons.
Sure.
Because everyone's defense is so good. And you know how it is. You're a producer, you work for a company, you want to sell copies. I don't think to a casual this looks interesting. It was like
yeah.
they want to see explosive action, right?
Yeah.
It's like basketball, right? It's like 2000s basketball.
Thing.
It's like 2000s basketball. No one liked watching Popovich and Tim Duncan win all these championships. And all Tim Duncan did was just hook shots, mid-range. And it was the most boring looking game, but it was so fundamentally sound, right? Yeah. Whereas the Suns were the most explosive team in the NBA, ultra offense. Everyone loved that shit.
Sure.
But the defense was winning.
Yep. Yeah, I brought that up briefly in terms of like how the basketball like has evolved to the point to where I don't enjoy how it is now because it's too offensive driven. Yeah. And you know it goes that's a great parallel because like that's typically like what the commissioner or like people think that the public wants to see, and like it's just like we want to see offense, and like to us like the hardcore, right, like seeing those guys do like the Korean backdashes and then whiff punishing something. Like I see that and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's dope. Like I love seeing that. Same thing in Street Fighter when you see somebody whiff punish, but it's just like to the casuals, they're like they don't want to worry about footsies and stuff like that. They just want to dictate offense and go in. Like I've seen I think the biggest thing from playing in the hub is a lot of the people that just complain about having to chase me. And I'm like, dude, you play a grappler. Dude, you play Cammy. Like, I don't want to be in your face. You play Ed. Like, I don't want to deal with flicker mix-ups,
Yeah, you're the same thing. I don't want to deal with your offense.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. So it's just like I'm not gonna allow you to dictate the game or put myself in those bad situations just to satisfy you.
I think though, like in Tekken's case, because that discourse, everyone's going nuts over heat. I still think at the end of the day, the better player is still going to win because you're going to run out of heat as a newer player. You're going to run out of heat, and then they're not going to know how to defend all your stuff. There's so many characters in Tekken, so much stuff you got to know, and they're not going to be able to win. They may get around on you, and maybe every once in a while get a win. And I think they succeeded. I think Rada really succeeded in that, closing that gap a little more.
Okay.
Yeah. But I still think you're never going to win against a strong player. You're never going to win. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's still not going to happen. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I just have thoughts about this whole games becoming easier because I think these games, they become easier and they simultaneously have gotten harder.
Yeah.
Right. Like, is it that they made offense easier, and then because of that, now they're hard? Now we have to block easy offense, and so that's what makes it harder. Or
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it, and just the fact that you got to know the frame data as well. I mean, knowing that stuff, and then like there's more characters, there's more moves, so there's more knowledge checking.
Yeah.
Than ever, and I don't know, man. I just.
Like that's not just a Tekken thing, right? That's
no, it's not just a Tekken thing,
right?
Yeah, I don't think. I think Tekken for the higher land players, it just becomes harder because now you got heat, but it's still the same thing.
I remember.
Lost it.
I remember. I think it was you and Jeff on a call once. It probably wasn't even the podcast. I think we were just shooting the shit, playing games, and. I think we were playing 4 actually, and you and Jeff were both like, "Yeah, new games are harder," and that blew my mind in 2012 or 14 or whenever that was. Because I was just like, "Wait, all I ever hear about from OGs is how they've made these games scrub friendly and easier," and so it was fascinating to hear 2 OGs say that they're harder.
Yeah, because I believe both things can be true at the same time. Yes, there are a lot of easier things. Yes, does Drive Rush make offense easier? Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Does the heat mode make offense easier? You can get in and start attacking your opponent easier. Absolutely. Does X Factor make you amazing? Absolutely. But I don't know, man. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I just
now you have to block all that stuff too, right?
But the amount of knowledge you have now that the average person has now makes it the game as a whole a lot harder. Now they have you got the players that have all this knowledge now. We didn't have all this knowledge back then, or only a select few did. If you're in a privileged area, because we didn't have online and all that stuff. But yeah, you got these people that have all this knowledge now on top of all this quote unquote gimmicky stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's become easier, but it's become harder in every aspect. I don't know. I just think both things are true.
Yeah, we talked about that with Isaac in terms of like the level of players back then, and like I mentioned that too, and like where I feel like the floor of the skill level of players has been risen, whereas the base, the base player is better, or like the lower level players are better than the lower level players before.
Oh, by far. I mean, come on, man. When I look at Street Fighter 4 when it came out versus, let's say, Street Fighter 6, dude, the amount of good players on day one completely destroyed the amount of good players there was on day one Street Fighter 4 by a landslide. Yeah. It's not even the same. We got that, dude. The amount of it took us a while to learn 4 because the flow of information wasn't really there yet. We were still kind of creating all that. Streaming wasn't a thing yet, and all that. YouTube was still only a couple years old, and people didn't. Not everyone had access to streaming devices, and playing on PC wasn't common yet. And it's just like, dude, it's so different. It's night and day, dude. Again, I was able to walk into 4 and I could just mop the floor against all you guys without even trying. Mm-hmm. And then go into 6 and I'm already having to try hard right out the gate.
Yeah.
Everyone already knows what's. Look at you. It's like you said, it just comes out and everyone, dude, you're looking at people that are just like, they look godlike with them after a day.
Yeah.
Come on. It's crazy.
We talked about, Benny's right. We talked about this with Isaac as far as, and Benny, you brought up the floor, but I'm also curious about the ceiling as far as like the LeBron and Michael Jordan thing.
Someone doesn't know their basketball.
Taylor Swift or Michael Jackson. There we go. We do that one too. So like, are the MJ? They're both MJ. What's it called though? Like, do you think that the best players in modern era are better than the best players from the older era?
It's hard to say. I think it's too hard to say. I mean, you can't really go off stats. Stats are skewed just because the stats are going to be much bigger now because there's way more tournaments, there's way more players, way more money, blah, 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 blah. The only thing I can say is like, it's amazing what top level players could figure out back then.
Yeah.
Without all that information. It's like, damn, you look it you like, you try to find old footage, you're like, damn, they were playing like that back then. How'd they know that so quickly?
Yeah.
Like there's someone, Riz One posted a video of this old Street Fighter
I did see it.
World War.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that video before. And that was only like a few months after World War came out in arcades. And I'm looking at the way they're playing and I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Like they're doing advanced stuff. And I'm like, how the hell? And because back then we were the better players in Japan. We were way better at Street Fighter 2 than Japan back then.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, early on we were better than Japan.
Huh.
Because Japan early on, they played Street Fighter 2 more as a one-player game, where we played it more competitively.
Oh,
I didn't know that. It really wasn't until Super Turbo when that changed.
Yeah, I brought this up before with Isaac too. Is in terms of it's hard to compare eras too, right? Because like the games and everything were different. Like even like the Tetris scene that I've been involved in, right? Like there's a huge parallel with like Jonas, who was 7-time champion, right? And then if you look at basketball, like the Celtics of like the 60s won like 8 championships in a row or something, right? And that that's the record, right? That's not likely to happen now. But it's like, how much credit do you give to them and like the competition they had, the level of play that they had, right?
Tough.
It's tough. And then you look at like the modern era of like Tetris, and like I don't think anybody would say these kids that are like rolling and doing like these, advanced techniques. Like it's hard to say like, are they technically skilled better than Jonas? Yes, 100%. But are they overall better players? Like, there's no way to tell. I mean, obviously, rest in peace, Jonas. He's not here anymore to like compete against those kids because, that'd be the only real way to kind of test things. But it's at the same time, it's like it's so hard to compare different eras and even like the
it's
fighting
like
games and
basketball.
like
It's like basketball, right? Everyone's comparing LeBron, Jordan. It's hard to say. You can have the arguments of the stats, but then you can have the argument of the style of play. Basketball was different. Some people could argue that because obviously, it was more aggressive in the 90s for sure.
Yeah.
But you could also argue that some people argue against Jordan because it's like, well, who is he really playing against?
Yeah, the level of competition, exactly, right? The
whole
like
so
he's played against
that is an
and...
argument. That is an argument because after they in the 80s when they finally beat the Pistons, which was a tough team. Like, who were they really facing? That's you could argue like that's why they dominated. They did 2-3-piece because the level of play probably just wasn't the greatest. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, but I see the argument. I do see the argument. Whereas, like, you have LeBron now, but you also have Steph Curry. You had all these other players that are just like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah, and again, like it goes back to kind of like the
It's
base
hard, but it's
player, right?
hard.
Like
It's
because
so
like the
hard.
people, the players nowadays, like athletically,
Are
miles ahead of like
they are
guys from
they're
30
built
years ago,
better.
right?
They can all shoot. Like the 7-footers can shoot. They couldn't
Yep.
shoot in the 90s.
They got
So
access to
it's
better like
different.
nutrition, everything.
Yeah. Sports science and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got
sports
access
science is a
to
big thing. Yeah,
better trainings. Yeah, all that stuff. So I would probably argue. I mean, as amazing as the old school players were, the top players like Justin, Alex, and all that, I still look at like Alex, Troy, and Vi. Back in the day, the old games. Like I've always looked up to their style of play because they were amazing. But it's just like I don't know, man. But then I look at guys like, today, like I look at Punk and all these guys, and they're brilliant. They're brilliant players. And I just like, I am 100% sure if they wanted to go 100% in on Super Turbo or something, they would dominate. Yeah. They would be super strong. I don't know, man. I think today, I'm not going to discredit the old era. We did amazing shit on limited resources.
Yeah.
But it also, I feel like it took us longer to get there. I don't know. I don't want to discredit anyone. I think they're both amazing. Both eras are amazing in different ways. I just think there's just a way more huge influx of good players now. Like it's just there's no contest there.
This conversation gets interesting because it's like people are products of their environments in a lot of ways too, right? And so when we talk about the times being different, it's also like, like if you were to put, I don't know, the Birds up against like John Choi and Watson, for example, in a game, right? Like I don't know who you would bet on, but fundamentally we learned a lot about how to play fighting games from John Choi and Watson, right?
And then they add to it.
And then they added to it, right? And so it's like the younger generation will always have that benefit that the older generation just straight up didn't ever have.
Absolutely.
And so it's hard to examine them in a vacuum like that because they're fundamentally related to one another. You stand on the shoulders of giants,
Yeah, so I don't like really comparing those. I'm not really a fan of comparing the two, to be honest. Yeah. And then also when it comes to the old games versus new games, at the end of the day, dude, it's just like whoever's winning, they're the better player.
Yeah.
Period.
You have to take it like the eras as they are. Like you can compare the players in that era amongst, the people that played that game at the top level and their peers at that time. Like it's too hard to kind of compare. It's easy to kind of be like, yeah, throw this guy into this game and he could be great, but like obviously we won't know.
And then on top of that, you have if the game truly was just scrubby, then why do we always see the same top players?
Yeah.
Place. Maybe they're not. I mean, if it's stacked, they may not always be getting like top 8, but you're going to see them there a lot. You're going to see similar names more often than not in top 8 more than anyone else, right? Yep. They're the best for a reason. If the game was so damn scrubby, then why aren't they getting like second one game, one tournament, the next tournament they're getting like 90, 97th or something like that.
If it was truly random, right?
If it truly was. So at the end of the day, it's still, you could say like this game has gotten easier or whatever. I was like, well, maybe it just clicks better for that person, and maybe if it was that easy, then you should be doing good too. You should be randomly going up there, but you're not.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's how I put in your work.
Right? Yeah.
You have to put in your work no matter what. And the same thing when it comes to Tekken 8. I know he is toxic, but at the end of the day, I still think the strong players are going to play. And it also comes down to your mindset too. Because I know like Arslan Ash and all that have issues with Tekken 8 and all that. And I think with the Heat, and Arslan Ash hasn't been winning, right? You know, whereas like 70 dominated, right? I mean, dude.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. He's gone down as a GOAT for Tekken 7. But Tekken 8 is struggling. And it's either, I get it, you may not like it or whatever, and that's fine. But it's just like, I don't like it when it's like, this game's scrubby, because now you're just discrediting everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, you need to step up and learn it.
Yeah.
I understand that there's some heat. There is some heat smashes that have no counterplay in Tekken. You just have to like again when Jin, when he's got his heat engaged, when his heat is engaged, that big cycle crusher that you can't sidestep or anything, it literally has no counterplay. So you basically have to stop until he runs out of meter or uses it, right? I can understand that being frustrating, but that just is what it is. And you know, even then, when they patch it, they're gonna patch it. It's gonna happen.
That's a good point too.
And they're gonna patch it, so it's just like, just learn it. It's like, dude, most of this stuff still has counterplay, and the better player is still gonna win. I don't know, man.
I think back on like this is. I'm getting like George Lucas feelings here, where it's like it's poetry, it rhymes, you know, because like we have this conversation every time a new fucking video game comes out. Like I remember my kind of moment was Street Fighter 5. Yeah, like when Street Fighter 5 came out, everybody complained about Street Fighter 5 being terrible. And yeah, they patched it. They did exactly what you mentioned, is they fixed it over time. But people were still like, it's terrible, it's scrubby, it's too offensive based now, you know. And
same thing happened with Super Turbo. Super Turbo, really? What happened? Supers.
Oh yeah, comeback mechanic. Right. Oh, Street Fighter 4. Everyone complained about ultras because it was like, oh, I get punished for, or rather, people get rewarded for losing, and that was the latest thing everyone was mad about.
Street Fighter Alpha 1, even though it truly was a bad game, but people hated the chain combos. It was easy damage.
Oh,
the better player was still going to win though, because you still had to run good fundamentals and all that stuff, but it was just really easy to land damage, you know. You can still argue like Alpha 2, Alpha 3 customs they're toxic as hell. Yeah. But the better player is usually still winning, regardless.
Yeah.
So because of this being like a recurring theme, I'm less interested in like dispelling or naming the reasons for why. Like, because we go through this every time, right? And I'm more interested in Benny and I in particular, we've had some good shows lately where we talk about kind of like when we learned these lessons as we've gotten older and kind of like grown over the years. And so I was curious about, like, to you, Scott, and to you, Benny, like where was a situation where when you were growing up, or like when you were learning, like throughout your fighting game career, where that switch flipped, where you were like, oh, you thought this game was fucking terrible and scrubby as hell, and then how did you get past that? How did you grow past that to ultimately land on the opinions that you guys have already shared today?
Well, with me, I never really felt that way with these games. I was always excited when a new game came out, and I always jumped on it no matter what, because it was just fun.
Really?
I was just never on that, where I was just like, man, this game's scrubby, and I just stopped. It's just, is the game fun?
Yeah.
That's all it was for me, dude. Every new game came out, I was like, it was fun. The only games I quit were like, are they boring? And that's what happened when Super Street Fighter 2 came out. I was like, this game is boring. And that's all it was. Actually, first Street Fighter came out, there's Infinites and all that. I still played it. It was fun. Yeah, I just learned. I just learned it.
You didn't get angry or anything that the game wasn't going the way that you thought it would?
I mean, the games could tilt me sometimes, you know, Infinites or whatever, but the games were just fun and I didn't care.
Yeah.
And if they weren't fun, you just stopped playing them?
I would just stop playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Tekken 8, like I said, Tekken 8's toxic, but goddamn, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, man. I think the heat system is really fun. Like, yeah, Tekken 6, I think the drive rush system and all that is really fun. So I'm a perfect parries. It doesn't bother me because it's fun.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat. Like I've never really played a game and like just thought like, oh man, this shit's scrubby. Like there's been games that I've been good at, games that I haven't been good at. Like I loved Cross Tekken. Like I wasn't particularly good at the way that that game played in terms of like the kind of heavy ground game and footsie style that it was. Like I was getting blown up in that game constantly, but you know, I got the chance to play Akuma, you know, and do stupid stuff, right? Like I was, you know, I had fun playing it in my own kind of way. Same thing with like Marvel. Like I was never really good at Marvel, but like the chances and the opportunities that I did have to like do combos, do mix-ups, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Like I probably lost 90% of the games, but I never thought like, oh, this is scrubby. I mean, if anything, people were calling Hulk Stand H scrubby, if anything.
Yeah,
But
so like I'm gonna quit a game because it's not fun before I say this game is scrubby.
Interesting.
Like
because I just don't enjoy it. It's just not my type of game. I'm going to stop playing the game because of that.
All right, that was episode 79, part 1, Getting Old with Sabre with Benny, Jon, and Scott. So thanks everybody for tuning in. You can find us at Twitch at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and an Apple Podcast and Spotify under Absolute Guard. Tune in next week for the second half of this episode, and we're going to talk about cross Tekken, mentorship, and lots of old man sagely advice. So hope to see you all there.